So that is the iconic sound that everybody in Australia knows, yeah, Daniel?
Yes, unfortunately I know it all too well.
Yeah, you must be dreaming that sound at this point, right?
Yes, that is for sure.
This is a fantastic project you put together here. We're all very familiar with the pedestrian crossing. So what have you actually designed here?
So my project is it's titled the Australian Traffic Light Ecosystem Redesign.
Okay.
So it's an innovative take on both the pedestrian and the traffic light part. Disabled people can be issued with disability cards where they can scan below the traditional PB5 push button.
This here?
Yes.
Yeah.
And when that is done, it grants an additional 20 seconds of cross time to accommodate for any mobility issues. And on the side, there is the actual car traffic lights which have symbols on there. And that's to cater for any colourblind people, especially people suffering from monochromacy, which is where they can't see any colour at all.
Right. So Daniel, can you give us a demonstration of what you've designed here?
Yeah, of course. So the main component here is that these disabled people have a mobility pedestrian scheme card on them at all times when walking around in public. They would scan here, right below the general push button, and that acts as pushing the button, so you just have to scan. And as opposed to just having 10 seconds in this case, it's 30 instead.
So you've extended the time to cross the road, giving us more time.
Yeah, and that's the main component. And as you can see here, with the car traffic lights having gone to red, you'll see that the symbols here, obviously, they convey meaning towards colourblind people who may struggle to see the colour.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I really like about it is you found a design problem in a very everyday place. You know, something that we're so familiar with, but even within that, you were rethinking it from the kind of the grassroots up about issues of usability, who is the audience, who are the users, in a really open and very generous kind of way. I mean, that's a big part of this, I think, yeah?
I have a bit of a soft spot for, the elderly, of course, have to make sure we keep taking care of them.
Absolutely.
Through design.
So actually, your design here addresses a really big problem, doesn't it? It's really trying to make pedestrian crossings safe for people with all sorts of mobility abilities across Australia.
With Australia becoming an ageing population, there's definitely a need to have to cater to this.
Yeah. This sounds like a very personal project for you.
Yeah, definitely. The main inspiration for this project was my late grandmother, because she suffered from osteoporosis and arthritis, as well as cancer. Her body was deteriorating and the mobility issues became pretty hard for her, as she would do something simple as crossing a road each day.
I love that you kind of took on a big sort of society level problem, but it came from a very personal place. Your grandma.
Of course, yeah. That was definitely the main driver throughout the year.
Yeah. And given that it is such a big sort of agenda, we all know that, traffic lights and so on, you would have had to design your way into a lot of really big systems. So electronics, vision systems, sort of audio systems. How complicated was this project?
It was very complicated for me, especially because I didn't have any experience in coding and whatnot.
Really?
Yeah, so what I initially did was I spoke to a traffic light company as to how I would actually be able to do this. And they gave me insights as to how I could use the Arduino systems to code and wire up everything. That's for the main mechatronics component.
So you actually had to teach yourself coding to do this?
Yeah, I was lucky enough that my teacher has a background in electric engineering, so he's actually pretty familiar with Arduino systems.
Okay.
And that way I was able to sort of bounce things off of him, and he would help me in class to essentially develop my skills into what I had here today.
Was there a point then where you got in the depths of all of this and thought, no, this is too hard. I've gone in to too big a problem to solve here?
About halfway through the year, when exams started to pick up and there was a big workload with this project, I started to think to myself, do I really want to be doing all this? Maybe I'll just have a little model that doesn't work.
Yeah.
And well, I knew that after my grandmother died, I knew she wanted me to push for this project to be...
Your grandmother passed while this was going on?
Yeah, unfortunately halfway through the project she passed away. She was the main motivator for it all, so...
That would have been tough.
Yeah, it was very tough. But look, I was able to get by it, thankfully. And instead of having to bring me down, definitely motivated me to create it and make it as to what it is today.
Yeah. Well, look, this kind of product design or industrial design is a little bit beyond me. So I've got a colleague that I want to invite over to have a chat with us. Do you mind if I bring Freddie over to talk with us?
No
Freddie's
problem.
here at UTS. She's in product design. Hi, Freddie.
Hi, Anthony.
How are you going?
Yeah, good, thanks. How are you?
I'm very well. This is Daniel.
Nice to meet you, Daniel.
And this is his fabulous design.
Yeah, very iconic design. Were you able to get your hands on one of these and maybe pull it apart for like a product autopsy? Or?
I was able to pull it apart, essentially, see what was going on inside with the microcontrollers in conjunction with speaking to the traffic light companies, so they were actually able to inform me what was going on and what approach I should be taking in completing this project.
So that helped you define those constraints that you had to design with?
Yeah, that was definitely the main constraint, and that's a main part of why my project is all developed in 12 volts rather than deadly 240 if anything went wrong. Another constraint of my project was to ensure that my project didn't deviate from the current aesthetic look of the traffic light system as well as the actual functionality aspect. And that's why I've essentially kept the existing pedestrian lights as well as the standard traffic light form, but just with the symbols for the colourblind people.
Materials, did that come into play when you were trying to
I was fortunate enough that my father's in the construction business and he knew a lot of suppliers where I was able to get such random materials from for a better price as you would compared to Bunnings.
I actually had a question about the symbols that you eventually used on the lights themselves. How did that whole process go? So you had the electronics and the Arduino, which is the behind the scenes magic that's going on. Then you have this very conspicuous visual language. You kind of had to, well, did you invent it completely or did you adapt it from somewhere else?
So the initial idea with this project was to just include the time extension system, but I wanted to sort of expand it to a whole traffic light ecosystem, and I thought about how I could do this with the actual car traffic lights. A main part of actually developing these symbols, I had to research into something called semiotics, which is how symbols can convey different meaning. I essentially did this throughout my whole project. I couldn't come to a consensus on what was appropriate until the very end.
Well, you had to make a decision.
I had to make a decision, but I sort of came up with a symbol system that I thought would be able to best convey to the general audience like what it actually means. For example, the arrows sort of pointing upwards for the green arrow, the X for the stop. I thought they definitely convey it the best.
So a whole world of graphics that you kind of had to invest in the symbols.
It made up a big part of the research part of my portfolio.
Freddie, what do you think about the audience that this design serves? I mean, there's a real need for this kind of thing, isn't there?
Oh yeah, of course. I definitely think that there's a need, especially with the new symbols that you've used and the research you've done behind it, because I feel like it definitely is something that could be implemented in today's society. We need to have that user focus and user-centered design more in society, and the inclusive design aspect.
Yeah, another part of the project was definitely that ergonomics came into play. For example, having like a low placement of the scanning system was definitely important because the general population would have mobility issues in their arms as well, and having to raise their arm a bit higher to scan the system just might be a bit more uncomfortable as to oppose having it below.
It sounds like you went through a really interesting kind of process here too. Very personal one with your grandma passing and all that.
Of course.
You having to kind of find the motivation to come back to the project halfway through. What advice would you have for other students sort of going through this whole HSC process?
Well, I guess the main thing is that to expect that times can get tough throughout year 12 and that it's very important that you don't give up during those times. I know it sounds pretty cliche, but you know, year 12 isn't a joke, and if you're taking it seriously, you have to make sure that with a major work that you're consistently working on it throughout the year and not just leaving it till deadlines. I may be a bit guilty of doing that here and there, but it just makes the whole process a lot easier, definitely.
Yeah. With all of this, it sounds like it set you up absolutely to kind of like get going on your career. So it's a green light all ahead, right? It's green lights all the way for you, I think, Daniel.
Of course.
Couldn't resist.
I like it.
Congratulations.
Good dad joke. Thank you very much.
Brilliant.